Tide fans, before we get today's show started, be sure to hit that big red button and subscribe to the Alabama Football Report, your one-stop shop for everything news and rumors on Crimson Tide recruiting. And hey, we'll be here all season long as the Alabama Crimson Tide try and win that 7th national championship under Nick Saban. Be sure to hit that big red button and stay in the know a little bit more about the Crimson Tide more than your friends here on the Alabama Football Report. Welcome into the Alabama Football Report. I am your host, RC Maxfield, and SEC play is finally here. We don't have to worry about those Mercer-type teams, at least for this week, as the Alabama Crimson Tide will start their SEC slate down in Gainesville, Florida, against the number 11 Florida Gators. Before we get into the preview and a little injury report update, who you got for Week 3 of the Alabama Crimson Tide season as the number 1 BAMA team will head down to Gainesville to face off Florida, the number 11 team in the country. I expect to see a lot of Bamas down in the comments, but let me know, and maybe I'll give you my score prediction here later on in the show. But first, let's get that injury update on Will Anderson Jr. as, listen, he sustained a knee injury, as we all know by now, against Mercer. Saban said he was day-to-day on Monday. Could the sophomore linebacker play at number 11 Florida? Well, good news is he was back at practice, and Nick Saban said he's headed in the right direction. Now, they might hold him out just to play it safe. Again, you could get an extra week of rest since you do play Southern Miss next week. I do think it's just absolutely amazing after how that injury looked that he's even practicing when we're recording this video on Wednesday and moving into game week against Florida. Just absolutely amazing that he could still be available after the severity of that knee injury in terms of what it looked like on the field. I think overall you need Will Anderson on this defense for Alabama. You need him to guide that linebacking core that has already lost a key playmaker already this season, and the secondary that has some guys with some limited experience outside of Josh Jobe, but have the talent there, including Kool-Aid back there. But you tell me, does Will Anderson play this week? I know I've asked this question already once this week, but now that he's back at practice, I want to know if your opinion has changed. Type Y for yes, type N for no if you think the sophomore linebacker will be playing for the Crimson Tide this weekend down in Gainesville. Got to shout out today's sponsor, BetUS. Go to chatsports.com/TideBet and use the promo code TIDE125, and you'll get a 125% deposit bonus. Now, go over there, deposit $100 or whatever you're capable of. But for the sake of math, I'm not too good at it. Let's just say you deposit $100. They give you $125 on top of that. You got $225 to play with all season long and bet on your Crimson Tide. And how have the Crimson Tide fared so far this season against the spread and win-loss record? Well, here you go. They're 2-0, obviously, on the season. Against the spread, they're 1-1. And when it comes to over-unders, they're also 1-1. So maybe a little dicey when it comes to betting on the Crimson Tide, but have fun with those prop bets as well over on BetUS. All you got to do is go to chatsports.com/TideBet and use the promo code TIDE125 to get that 125% deposit bonus. It's the best one on the internet, and hey, when you use that promo code, you'll be able to play and bet on the Crimson Tide all season long. Just be sure to use that promo code and go to the website, chatsports.com/TideBet. Let's talk about the 5 storylines in this one for number 1 Alabama and number 11 Florida. No, it says 15. Typos happen. That one's on me. But the first thing is who's going to play quarterback for the Gators? I mean, I think it's going to be Anthony Richardson, but Dan Mullins has come out and said it might be a quarterback by committee. He likes what Richardson brings to the table, but who's it really going to be for the Gators? Are they going to implement a 2-quarterback system? I mean, Richardson hasn't done much on the year. Looking at his numbers, he's 6 for 11, a $192 and 2 TDs. I mean, I like him as a prospect, but right now, I'd probably say he is likely to start for the Gators, but I think the overall viewpoint of this is they're probably going to run 2 QBs out there at some point, similar to what maybe the Chicago Bears are doing on Sunday Night Football, in the sense of where Andy Dalton is Richardson in this situation, and then you bring in another quarterback for maybe some red zone type work. But overall, I think this is Richardson's job in terms of him playing against the Crimson Tide. How well does he play? Well, that's up to the Bama defense, and that moves us into the next talking point, which is, well, we'll talk about the Bama defense here in a minute. Got ahead of myself. Bama offensive line and Florida D-line on this one in terms of Bama line just didn't look good against Mercer, right? Early on, at least those first 2 drives where they seemed to struggle, they let some uncharacteristic pressures happen against the Mercer Bears. And Evan Neal is the leader of this offensive line. There's no doubt about it, but everybody needs to step up and really just make sure that you protect Bryce Young in his first true road game as the quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and that starts with Evan Neal. This is a big-time test after the front struggled against Mercer, right? We're talking about SEC caliber competition and premier SEC caliber competition in the number 11 Florida Gators. This is not going to be similar to last week where they're going to be able to work their way through this. This is, you need to be on your game as soon as the whistle blows down in Gainesville, or else the number 11 Florida Gators might hand you your first loss of the season if you're the Alabama Crimson Tide. Staying on the offensive side of the football, I'm interested to see Bama's wide receivers versus Florida DBs. Now, Florida does have 2 really good members of their secondary, but as we know, Alabama is becoming wide receiver U. I was watching a video the other day where Mac Jones literally at one point had 4 first-round picks at the wide receiver position on the field, and then he had Najee Harris in the backfield. We know that Alabama produces skill players, and John Mechie is one of those guys, but Elam and Perkins are the players to watch on this Gators secondary, right? Outside of them, a huge amount of question marks for the Florida Gators in that secondary. But those 2 guys are absolute problems and NFL-type players when it comes down to it. Outside of them, I'm not sure who's really going to be able to guard Jameson Williams and anybody else in that wide receiver core for Alabama. But Elam and Perkins can cause problems, but again, we're talking about first-round caliber guys potentially in that Alabama wide receiver core. Maybe not right now, but they have the talent for it. I'm curious to see who Dan Mullins and the Florida Gators put Elam on and put Perkins on when it comes to the Alabama wide receivers, because I think when it comes down to it, this is going to be the matchups to watch, and Bryce Young is going to have to go away from them maybe on some of these plays. Getting off to a strong start is a must for Alabama in this one. We talked about that Mercer start. There's no room for error in this one. We're talking about a premier team in the number 11 Florida Gators, especially on the defensive side of the football. Nick Saban vying for that 7th national title down in Tuscaloosa, about to turn 69 years old. Well, is 69 years old and about to turn 70 on Halloween, actually. So happy birthday to Nick Saban here in about a month and a half. But the fast start is critical on both sides of the ball for the simple fact of a lot of these guys starting for Alabama now haven't played a lot of snaps in the SEC, including Bryce Young, right? But you need guys to come out quick. You need that first scoring drive to happen on the first or second drive of the game. So you just see those shoulders go down a little bit. There's a little bit of relief. If you go into this game in the second quarter and it's close in terms of maybe you're behind or you're stressing a little bit, that is not ideal for this Alabama Crimson Tide football team. I think Nick Saban will have these guys ready, and he sent a message to this team after what happened to Mercer. I fully expect them to come out with a fast start against the number 11 Gators. As I mentioned, Bryce Young, this is his first test in terms of SEC competition, right? He got some snaps last year, but this is his first time as a starter facing SEC caliber competition. He's faced off against Miami, who barely beat App State last week, and don't get me started on Mercers of the world, right? He's going to have to come out here and show that he's living up to the hype, right? This is what's going to need to happen for the guy from modern day or out there in California coming in, and he has to prove that he's living up to that top 5 recruiting prospect hype that he had coming out of high school. He's going to need to be a star. Simple and plain. That is what Bryce Young is going to need to be when he steps foot on that field down in the swamp against the number 11 Gators. If he isn't a star for the Alabama Crimson Tide, this might be a long day because I think the defense has its limitations in terms of keeping them in the game. They're going to have to score when it comes down to it. The running backs, there's a lot of them in there. You're going through Robinson, Sanders, as well as some other guys in Williams. But what do you have in the quarterback position against an SEC caliber defense in the Florida Gators? I'm interested to see what happens to him in his first true SEC test. For me, I think he comes out guns a-blazing. I think Bryce Young is an absolute star, but I want to see it against the number 11 Gators. But let me know, which storyline are you watching the most between number 1 Alabama at number 11 Florida? I'm probably going Bryce Young. It's hard not to take your eyes off the quarterback position, right? When it comes down to whether we're talking high school, college, pros, it's the position that matters, and Bryce Young is that guy for the Alabama Crimson Tide. In the sus moment of the week for Alabama football, Jordan Battle went up to the podium and got asked a question from a local beat writer in terms of what's your favorite saying that Nick Saban says on a regular basis. Jordan Battle started out the conversation saying, I don't think I should say, and then in true college form goes right into it, right? No hesitation, walks right into it, and he says, well, Nick Saban says these two quotes quite a bit, and it's touch D's or suck on D's. And well, the video went viral, as it should, and it was a little interesting to see, but just an absolutely hilarious moment at the presser from Jordan Battle in the sense that I don't know if he's going to be able to go up to the podium again after revealing what his favorite sayings from Nick Saban are, just because, well, you don't often hear a guy go up to the podium who is selected by the team, right? These are not just, hey, the media wants this guy. That's not how this works. They individually pick from the athletic department who the football players are that get to speak to the media. And then your Jordan Battle, maybe it was him just saying, I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm going to put this out there and say that Nick Saban's favorite sayings are touch D's or suck on D's. As I mentioned, absolutely hilarious moment at the presser, though, when it comes down to it. You can't script this stuff any better when it comes to just really entertainment from the Alabama football team. But what you think? What's your one-word reaction to Jordan Battle and his quote on Nick Saban? I found it absolutely hilarious, right? This is what you want to see in press conferences. Sometimes they're just absolutely dull, and you just can't stand to just watch these things for 30 minutes, especially when you're a media member. But when these moments happen, you enjoy them, and you enjoy them often. And you know what you could be enjoying this weekend? A #1 Alabama victory over a top 11 team in the country. One more time, who you got? #1 Alabama or #11 Florida? I'm going with the Crimson Tide. You know that. In a game that has a high over-under, I say take the over because I think Alabama covers and gets the over-under in their first SEC victory of the season.